Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into all the subtle ways women signal interest.
That's right.
It's not always about grand romantic gestures or anything.
Yep.
It's the little things,
Exactly.
the nuances,
Yes.
body language, shared experiences, even how they're using social media.
It really is fascinating when you start to kind of break it down and see all the little ways that, women will kind of send out these signals that they're interested in somebody.
It's like a secret language.
Yeah, kind of like a secret code almost.
Yeah.
It's like they're staking their claim, sending a message to potential rivals while simultaneously drawing you in.
We're working from one source for this deep dive, so
Yeah.
it is just one perspective.
Of course.
But honestly, it's packed with those details that make you go, huh, so that's what that means.
It really does make you see things in a whole new light.
Okay, so the first sign that the source talks about is all about proximity and touch. And it's not as straightforward as it sounds. It's not just about being close, but strategically staying in your orbit.
Yes, it's like she's saying, hey, I'm here and I'm not going anywhere.
I think a lot of guys might misinterpret that.
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
like, oh, she's just being friendly.
Yeah.
But there's a real intentionality behind it.
Yeah, it's not about invading your personal space. It's just about kind of being consistently present, subtly reminding you that she's there, putting herself in your line of sight without being overly aggressive.
Right, and then there's touch. It's amazing how much can be communicated through something as simple as a touch.
Absolutely.
So how does a woman use touch to signal interest?
Well, touch is incredibly powerful, especially for women.
Yeah.
It can convey a whole range of emotions and intentions. Think about it this way: a fleeting touch on the arm during a conversation, a playful nudge, or even just her fingers lingering a little longer than necessary when she hands you something.
Oh, yeah.
Those seemingly innocent gestures can actually be very carefully calculated moves.
Yeah. It's like she's testing the waters, seeing how you respond.
Precisely.
Right.
It's a very subtle way of kind of gauging your interest and seeing if you reciprocate that energy. And it goes even deeper than that.
Yeah.
Have you ever noticed how when you're really connecting with somebody, you start mirroring their body language?
I never really thought about it consciously, but now that you mention it, I totally have.
Yeah.
It's like you're subconsciously trying to sync up with the other person.
Exactly. And when we mirror someone's body language, it creates a sense of harmony and rapport,
Right.
that feeling of being on the same wavelength. It's a subconscious way of saying, I get you and I like what I see.
Wow. I never realized how much was going on beneath the surface.
That's a whole secret code.
Okay, so we've talked about proximity and touch. What's the next subtle sign we should be looking out for?
Well, the source dives into how women use shared experiences to build connection. It's not just about grand gestures. It's about how she remembers and brings up those seemingly small, insignificant moments that you've shared.
I think sometimes we as guys can get caught up in trying to make these big romantic statements.
Yeah,
But it's the little things that really show you care.
exactly.
So what are some examples of this? What kind of things should we be noticing?
Well, think about it this way. She remembers a joke you made months ago and brings it up in conversation. Or she surprises you with your favorite coffee order, even though you only mentioned it once in passing.
Yeah.
It's the emotional weight that she attaches to those details that speaks volumes. It's about creating a sense of intimacy and shared history. Feeling of like we have our own little world.
It's like she's saying, I remember these things about you because they matter to me.
Exactly.
Okay, this is blowing my mind. I'm starting to see all these interactions in a whole new light.
That's the beauty of it. Once you start paying attention, you'll be amazed at all the subtle ways that women communicate their interest.
Speaking of communication, let's talk about social media.
Okay.
It's such a huge part of our lives these days.
Right.
So I'm guessing it plays a role in all of this too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Social media can be a woman's subtle playground for signaling interest.
Okay.
It's an extension of all those real-life cues, but with the digital twist.
So it's not just about liking your posts or leaving flirty comments?
Well, it can be, but it goes much deeper than that.
Mhm.
Look for how she presents herself in your online world.
Okay.
Does she tag you in posts that align with your interests? Does her content suddenly start reflecting things that you've talked about? It's all about claiming space in your digital life and sending a message to others.
It's like she's integrating you into her online persona,
Exactly.
subtly letting the world know that you're connected.
Right, and that's a pretty significant move.
Yeah.
It shows that she's not afraid to associate herself with you publicly.
I've definitely seen that before. It's interesting how these seemingly small actions can carry so much weight.
It's all about the subtext, the message beneath the message. And social media provides the perfect platform for that kind of subtle communication.
This has been so insightful. I'm starting to see social media in a whole new light.
Good.
Okay, so we've covered proximity touch, shared experiences, and social media. What other subtle signs should we be on the lookout for?
Okay, well, this next one is particularly interesting. The source calls it the protective stance. It's all about how a woman might subtly guard her connection with you when other women are around.
Oh, this sounds juicy.
So imagine this, you're talking to another woman, and she finds a reason to join the conversation or position herself nearby.
Uh-huh.
Or she might playfully tease you about it later.
So it's like she's subtly marking her territory,
Exactly.
letting the other woman know, hey, back off.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily about possessiveness or jealousy or anything like that.
Okay.
It's more about just being vigilant,
Yeah.
protecting something that she values.
That makes sense. It's like a subconscious response to a perceived threat.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? All these subtle behaviors really do reveal a lot about our underlying desires and motivations.
This is making me rethink all my past interactions. I bet.
Okay, so what's the next sign on our list?
Let's talk about rituals and integration.
Okay.
This is all about the power of shared routines and how she starts to kind of bring you into her world a little bit.
I love that. It's the little things that make a relationship special.
Exactly. Rituals create a sense of predictability and anticipation.
Yeah.
Those recurring activities. Grabbing coffee together every Friday morning, going for a walk in the park on Sundays.
Yeah.
It's not just about the activity itself, it's about building a rhythm for future interactions.
And it creates a sense of belonging, like you're part of something special.
Exactly. And then there's the big one, introducing you to her social circle. Friends, family group outings. This is a major sign that she's serious about you.
It's a level of vulnerability and trust that you don't just give to anyone.
Exactly. It's a clear sign that she sees you as a potential long-term partner.
Wow, this is making me rethink all the rituals I have in my own relationships. It's amazing how much meaning we attach to these seemingly small actions. It's true. We often underestimate the powers of those little everyday interactions. But they can actually be the foundation of a really strong and lasting connection.
This has been so insightful. I'm already starting to see these subtle signs everywhere. But before we get ahead of ourselves, there's one more key area we need to talk about.
Okay, communication. We've talked about all the nonverbal cues.
Yeah.
But what about how she actually communicates with you directly?
Right, because actions speak louder than words, but words still matter, don't they?
Well, they absolutely do.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that the source really emphasizes is to look for consistency in her communication.
Okay.
Does she initiate contact often?
Yeah.
Share updates about her day, even if they seem really small? Those are all little ways of kind of keeping that connection alive, not letting it fade into the background.
So it's like she's actively trying to stay on your radar, keep that line of communication open.
Exactly. And then as that connection deepens, you might see her become more emotionally open with you, sharing thoughts, dreams, vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
These aren't things that women just give away to anybody.
It takes a certain level of trust and comfort to open up like that.
Absolutely. Emotional vulnerability is a precious gift. It's a sign that she feels safe with you. She values your opinion. She wants to share that intimate part of herself with you.
So if a woman is being emotionally open with you, it's a pretty strong signal that she's into you.
Well, it's definitely a sign to pay attention to. I don't know that it necessarily means she's head over heels in love or anything, but it does indicate that she sees you as someone that she can trust and connect with on a deeper level.
That's really powerful. It makes you realize that sometimes the biggest signs aren't the grand gestures, but those quiet moments of vulnerability.
That's true, and it makes you think about how we as men can kind of be more receptive to that, creating a space where women feel comfortable opening up and sharing those deeper parts of themselves.
Absolutely. It's about being present, listening attentively, and showing that we value and respect their feelings.
I couldn't agree more. Okay, so we've talked about communication styles, emotional openness. What's the final piece of the puzzle when it comes to understanding how women signal interest?
The source keeps coming back to this idea that actions speak louder than words. It's great if she says she cares, but does she back it up with her actions?
Yeah, this is about demonstrable care. Her actions becoming a love language in themselves.
Okay.
Think about going out of her way to help you, remembering things that matter to you, showing up for you in meaningful ways.
Those actions are worth 1,000 words.
Precisely, it's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk. And it's not always about these grand gestures. Sometimes it's the little things that really speak volumes.
Like what? Give us some examples.
Well, imagine she notices you've had a really long day.
Yeah.
And she surprises you with your favorite takeout.
Yeah.
Or she offers to run an errand for you when you're swamped with work. These seemingly small gestures, they demonstrate care and consideration.
It's about being attentive to your needs and going out of her way to make your life a little bit easier.
Exactly. It's about those thoughtful actions that say, I'm thinking about you and I want to make you happy.
This is making me wonder if men and women show care and interest differently. I mean, do guys have their own subtle ways of signaling interest?
Oh, that's a fascinating question, and honestly one that probably deserves its own deep dive at some point.
Yeah.
The research on how men and women approach attraction and relationships, it's constantly evolving.
We'll have to explore that another time. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, from body language to social media to these grand gestures.
Right.
Or maybe not so grand gestures. What's the big takeaway here? What should our listener be thinking about?
Well, the key takeaway, I think, is that women have a unique and often very subtle way of signaling their interest. It's a combination of actions, words, and even those digital interactions that we talked about.
And while each of these signs on its own might not seem that significant together, they paint a pretty clear picture.
It's like a puzzle. Each piece contributes to the overall image. The more pieces you have, the clearer the picture becomes.
So listeners, I encourage you to think about these insights, maybe even observe them in your own life. You might be surprised at what you notice. It's like, we've given you this decoder ring for the secret language of attraction.
Exactly, but recognizing these signs is really just the first step. It's about understanding the language that she's speaking, the subtle ways that she's trying to connect with you.
But ultimately, the key to any successful relationship is open and honest communication.
Absolutely. These signs are valuable, but they're not mind-reading tools. Don't be afraid to have those direct conversations about your feelings and intentions. Sometimes the most romantic gesture of all is just being straightforward and saying, hey, I really like you.
So well said. As we wrap up this deep dive into the subtle ways women signal interest, what's the one thing you want to leave our listener with?
I would say, these signs are definitely a valuable starting point, but they're no substitute for really being present, paying attention.
Yeah.
Truly listening to what the other person is communicating, both verbally and non-verbally.
It's about being an active participant in the dance of attraction, not just waiting for the other person to lead.
Beautifully put. It's about engaging with each other authentically and building a connection that's based on genuine interest and respect.
And sometimes the most powerful signal of all is simply having the courage to be vulnerable and express your feelings directly.
Couldn't agree more. So go out there, be observant, be communicative, and most importantly, be yourself.
Until next time, happy connecting.
It's funny because we've been focusing on all these subtle signs, but it makes you wonder, are we overthinking things? I mean, is it really that complicated?
That's a great question. And I think it can be a bit of a paradox. On the one hand, these subtle cues are incredibly important, especially in those early stages of attraction. They help us kind of gauge interest, build rapport, navigate that delicate dance of courtship. But on the other hand, there's a risk of getting too caught up in analyzing every little gesture, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It can almost become paralyzing.
Yeah, you can totally overthink it. And that's where I think that open communication piece really comes in. It's great to be aware of these subtle signs, but they shouldn't replace direct and honest conversation.
So it's about finding that balance, right? Paying attention to the nonverbal cues, but also having the courage to just express your feelings directly.
I think that's the key to any successful relationship, really. Being able to communicate your needs and desires openly and honestly, while also being receptive to what the other person is communicating, both verbally and non-verbally.
It's like we're always sending and receiving these signals, whether we realize it or not.
Right.
And the more we understand those signals, the better we can navigate the complexities of human connection.
I love that analogy. It's like we're all part of this intricate dance, constantly responding to each other's cues.
And sometimes the most beautiful moments happen, we just let go of the choreography and just move freely, express ourselves authentically.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
It's about being present, being vulnerable, and trusting that the right connection will kind of unfold naturally.
I think that's a perfect note to end on. Listeners,
Yep.
I hope this deep dive has given you some valuable insights into the subtle ways women signal interest.
It's a combination of actions, words, and all those nonverbal cues that we've been talking about. So pay attention. Be observant, and don't be afraid to have those open and honest conversations.
Because ultimately, the greatest connections are built on mutual understanding, respect, and the courage to be your authentic self.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Until next time, happy connecting.